Hey guys, this is Max, and today I want to share my first experiences with the CineStill 800 Tungsten. As the name suggests, this is a tungsten color balanced, color negative motion picture film. So it is originally based on the Kodak Vision 3 5219 film, and the brothers Wright, who are behind the CineStill company, made a conversion of this film that enables you to process it in standard C41 processing. And they did that by removing the so-called Remjet layer that is, or the Remjet backing that is part of the film, and that usually serves not only to protect the film in traditional film or cinema cameras, but also serves as an anti-halation layer. So a particular layer that ensures that the highlights are not blowing out and that there are no halos created around highlights. And since they remove it in order to make it usable for the C41 processing, it also means that you do get these kinds of halos when you shoot into direct sources of light, or you do have rather strong blown out highlights. They will always be accompanied with a certain halo effect that the CineStill 800T is also famous for. It is important to notice, of course, that this film is primarily made for tungsten and incandescent light, for fluorescent light, for candlelight, and for mixed light situations where the daylight is not dominant. So where you always have a predominant or the dominant light source being incandescent, fluorescent, or tungsten light. For these purposes, this film is perfectly fine. If you intend to shoot it primarily in daylight, the company recommends you just get a Kodak Portra 400, for example, and not use the CineStill film. If you still want to use this particular one, the 800T, in daylight situations, they recommend you get a 85 or 81 filter. According to the package, of course, this is an ISO 800 film, but since it is based on the Kodak Vision 3, you should take a closer look at that, because the Kodak Vision 3 is actually an ISO 500 film. And looking through the results on the internet, and also based on the blog post I read and my own experiences here, I would highly recommend using this film or shooting it at ISO 500, at least in the beginning, if you're uncertain how this film will react and how it will behave. Definitely start out shooting it at ISO 500 first. The website of CineStill again suggests only to do that in daylight situations. You can basically use it in tungsten light situations at ISO 800. But also, if you look at their suggestions for the push process, this is another indication towards it being rather in ISO 500 film, because they basically say once you want to use it as in, let's say, 1250, ISO 1250 film, they recommend pushing it one stop. And if you want to use it at ISO 1600, they recommend pushing it 2 stops. So, and if you want to use it at 3200, they recommend 3 stops. And like that, of course, it feels very much like an ISO 400 Kodak Tri-X, for instance, would feel. That is also recommended to be pushed 3 stops if you want to shoot it at 3200. So my personal recommendation, always try to give it as much light as possible. I also, even now after shooting it at ISO 500, I got the impression that this is quite a light hungry film, and that it always helps this film to get as much light as possible. Our test is not really complete, in my opinion. So what we're sharing right now from our first photo walk, we went out with 2 rolls of film, 35mm film, at dusk, starting at dusk and then moving into the evening with my Minolta XD7. We brought 3 different lenses, a wide angle lens, a 24mm to 35mm zoom lens, an 85mm lens, a portrait lens that we hardly used, and my beloved 58mm f1.2 lens that I recently acquired, and that of course was well suited for these kinds of night situations. And yeah, as I said, we started out at dusk when we still had a lot of daylight available, and I like these results the most, and you will see that in a second. And then moved on into the night, and also trying to shoot a lot of into direct light or close to light sources. Also mixed light sources to get a feeling of how it would behave. And I really have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed, and it might also be connected to how I metered, or we metered, because we didn't use a handheld light meter, but instead basically went for the built-in light meter in the Minolta XD7. And since we were often shooting into direct light sources, of course, this was kind of irritating to the light meter. And I found that we had rather hard contrast, and in many cases a rather limited dynamic range, and I'm a little bit uncertain as to whether the reason was how we treated the film and how we shot it, or whether this is actually the characteristic of this film. And I have to admit that it requires some further testing to get a better feeling for this film, and I will definitely do that at some point. So for instance, I want to try it in candlelight situations, in more controlled light situations, for shooting portraits. That would be interesting. But also do another tour at night and get a better understanding of which light sources are rendered in which way, and how it would also feel if I meter for the shadows. Because what I read online again is that especially cinematographers praise this film for its retention of shadow detail, and in our case I couldn't feel that at all, and I'm fairly certain that it was connected to the way we metered, despite the fact that we added a little bit of additional light by shooting it at ISO 500. So without further ado, let's take a look at our photo walk and the final images that we took there. I hope you enjoy them. So I hope you enjoyed this little photo walk and the first impressions that we share here about the CineStill 800T. If you like this video, please remember to like it and maybe even share it with your friends. Please also leave us a comment in the comment section below and maybe provide us with some recommendations on how to better use the CineStill film. I also intend to test the CineStill 50D, the daylight version, sometime soon. I'm also using it for portraits potentially, so there will be more in that direction coming up. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope to see you soon, and please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more videos. Bye.